So Avatar: The Way of Water was released on Disney Plus the other day, so I finally got a chance to rewatch it and come to some more conclusive thoughts on how I felt about the film. After rewatching Avatar again, I realized that this is a film that's very hard for me to have a singular opinion about. This is a film with so many different elements to it, and some of those elements, which the title of this video suggests, are beautiful, while some are most definitely flawed. I can't just say whether I thought this film was good, or bad, or somewhere in the middle, because it's much more complicated to me than that. So I think that the only thing that I can do is go in depth about each specific element in this film and give my analysis about the good, bad, and somewhere in between of each. So I think a good place to start is probably the biggest takeaway from this film, which has to be the visual effects. In 2009, James Cameron transformed the world of VFX forever. Never before had an entirely computer-generated environment look so breathtakingly gorgeous and real. That movie single-handedly set a new standard for computer-generated effects. I don't think anybody, though, really expected James Cameron to raise the VFX standard again to the heights that he did. If there is one thing that most people can agree on about this film, it has to be that the visual effects are absolutely astounding. I will confidently say that this is the best-looking film I've ever seen in my life. The effort and skill that went into making this movie look as good as it did is world-class, and just shows the capability of James Cameron as a director and a leader, in leading his team to create something absolutely beautiful. I think that the main technical improvement that you'll notice in this film compared to the first Avatar is that everything just looks even sharper than it did in 2009. The Forest of Pandora looks so damn realistic, but the thing that impressed me the most were the ocean and underwater landscapes. Until this movie, every time a film tries to do underwater CGI, it always doesn't look that good. The reason for this is the actors are always having to act as if they're underwater when they're not actually underwater. And because they're acting out underwater scenes on land in front of a green screen, the physics always just looks off. I think that a great example of this is the underwater effects from the movie Aquaman. It looks decent, but also extremely fake at the same time. James Cameron obviously did not want this for his film. He wanted to create a breakthrough in underwater VFX. So what does he do? He literally invented underwater motion capture for this film. If you're wondering why the underwater scenes just look so damn good, it's not because these actors are just in front of a green screen. No. Everyone is being filmed and motion captured in an underwater tank. The hard work put into this technical achievement definitely pays off in the end, and as a result, some of the most gorgeous shots of the film take place underwater. Another reason why I think the movie looks so good is the blending between CGI and reality is so seamless. In Avatar 2009, the CGI looks incredible on its own, but when it comes into contact with real people and real sets, you can definitely tell the difference between the two. It looks extremely realistic on its own, but for example, in the scene where Neytiri saves Jake after the fight with Quaritch, and a CGI Neytiri is holding Jake's human body, it looks good, but you can tell that it's slightly off. It's not quite there. In The Way of Water, however, I literally forgot that there was a difference between what was real and what wasn't. There's a lot of on-screen time where humans are interacting with Na'vi, and you could completely buy into the fact that the Na'vi were real. I think that this in large part has to do with the fact that one of the biggest improvements in the CGI in this film compared to the previous one was the face-generating technology. The effects team used more facial cameras with an increased number of polygons for texture mapping on a computer-generated shape. This allowed for even more details of the actors' performances to come through, and the results speak for themselves. Here's a close-up from Avatar 2009, and here's a close-up from The Way of Water. It is incredible just how small technical improvements have such a large impact on the improvement of quality. Everybody knows that this film looks good. Anybody with a brain can realize that. But the major criticisms of the Avatar films have always been that sure, it looks good, but the story sucks. Which leads me into the next section of this analysis, the plot. So what I think I'm going to do for the plot is I'm going to look at each of the three acts individually, and then I'll give my overarching thoughts on some of the stuff that it does well and doesn't do well. So let's start off with Act 1. So there is a major time jump from the last film to this one. I don't know if they say it specifically in the film, but by my estimation, it's probably somewhere in the ballpark of around 17 years, based on the fact that Neteyam, the oldest son, seems to be around 16, maybe 17, and Neytiri also had to have gone through pregnancy with him, which was done off screen. But anyways, the humans are back. Of course they are. Did you really think they weren't gonna come back? But this time around, they're not just here to mine some bullshit metal out of the ground. No. This time, they're here to permanently colonize the planet so that Pandora can become the new Earth. We then get a 1-year time jump, and this is when we really start to meet our characters for the first time and get a sense of where the story is going. During the first battle sequence, the film establishes very early on that Loak is very impulsive and is always dragging his older brother Neteyam into trouble. This is a very important character detail for the both of them, and I'll go more in depth when I talk about the characters specifically. This film also very early on establishes the mindset and mannerisms of a now older and wiser Jake Sully. No longer is he the naive Marine, he's grown into a true commanding presence and leader of his family and people that we started to get a taste of at the end of the first Avatar. I'll also explore his character dynamic more when I talk about the characters themselves. But anyways, back to the story. So Jake has been leading his tribal warriors in assaults against human machinery to scavenge resources for their ongoing war against the human invaders. After the destruction of Home Tree, the clan now resides in a tunnel system located in the Himalaya Mountains. While in the Himalaya Mountains, we get a very cringeworthy scene of the kids trying to figure out who fucked who in order to create Kiri. I really don't know why they felt the need to include this scene because it provides absolutely nothing of value. I really wish it was just cut entirely. Around the same time, a little bit before, we are introduced to the villain of the film. They decided to resurrect Quaritch from the dead. Kind of. This is definitely one of the decisions in the film which has a lot of people split. I personally am kind of a mixed bag of whether I like the decision or not. After they explained in the film how the hell he's even back, it was definitely believable. Yes, the technology of the future would probably be able to do what they did, but the other part of me feels like James Cameron didn't want to just replace one evil human general with another, so he decided to write a way in which he could bring back the one that he already killed. It honestly just felt kind of lazy to me. Yes, they did bring him back in an interesting way, and Quaritch definitely is different as a character because of it, but I think that the storyline would have benefited more and felt more fresh if they decided to take it in a different direction. Quaritch then has to lead his team and his team of resurrected Na'vi humans to find and eliminate Jake Sully. So whenever the humans get close to Jake's camp, Awa attacks them through the means of the animals of Pandora. So their logic is that by sending the Na'vi squad, Awa won't attack them because they're Na'vi. This makes sense, I guess, but is Awa too stupid to realize that these guys are obviously not native? Like, look at these motherfuckers. It's just a small nitpick, but I thought I'd mention it because that decision has a lot of weight on the story to come. So Quaritch's squad makes their way to the campsite where human Quaritch died, and they happen to run into all of Jake Sully's kids. Why were all of Jake's kids in that exact location at that exact time of day at the exact same time when Quaritch's squad was there? Because the plot needs it to happen. So the kids barely escape with their lives with the help from Jake, Neytiri, and Neteyam, but Quaritch's squad is able to capture the stupid human kid. Because the humans capture the stupid human kid, Jake comes to the conclusion that in order to protect his family and the tribe, he and his family must go into exile because Spider is going to lead the humans to where they live and they're going to kill them all. What? This makes no sense. Let me explain. Even if the humans know where the Omotikaya are, they still can't go up there because if they do, the entirety of the animal kingdom is going to attack them. So the only thing that they can do is send up Quaritch's squad. But Quaritch's squad just took heavy losses. There's probably only like 6 of them left. And are you really trying to tell me that the Omotikaya can't use all of their warriors to simply put out a 24-hour surveillance to make sure that Quaritch's squad doesn't even come close to the campsite? Quaritch's team has no knowledge of the land and no tactical advantage over the tribe except for guns, which isn't even a tactical advantage anymore because as we saw in the first battle sequence of the film, they hijacked a train for the purpose of stealing weapons, so you know that they have guns as well. It makes no tactical and logical sense why Jake and his family would leave, but fuck it, I guess we're gonna go to the ocean. Which leads into Act 2. So Act 2 plays out very similar to the main plot of the first Avatar. Jake and his family make their way to the oceanic Metkaina tribe and are permitted to settle down there. They are told that they must learn their customs, however, because their forest skills mean nothing there. For most of the second act, Jake and Neytiri take kind of a backseat. This act is largely dedicated to developing the kids' characters and the Metkaina's chief's children as well. Jake and Neytiri do show up on occasion to give parental guidance, but that's really about it. This part of the film pretty much just plays out as a teen drama. Jake's kids, who I will refer to now as the Forest Kids when I'm talking about them as a group, get bullied by the Ocean Boys because they look weird to them and they suck at all the skills that they're trying to learn. It's a slow process of them winning over the Ocean Boys' respect, especially the oldest one. Loak also starts to form a potential romantic affair with the chief's daughter, which is obviously going to get more development in the later films. It's not that any of this stuff was bad per se. I think it does well in developing the kids as individuals, in particular Kiri and especially Loak. But I definitely feel like they needed to shave off about 10 to 20 minutes of this act, because it does drag at times pretty heavily. They all start to live in relative peace until shit hits the fan. So Kiri has a major seizure when she connects to the spear tree, and they're forced to call in Max and Norm from the campsite to try and save her. This ends up leaving a trail which helps lead Quaritch right to them. Quaritch starts attacking local nearby villages in search of Jake, and eventually tries to draw him out by attacking the spirit whales, because he knows that's going to piss off the Ocean Na'vi. And it does. which leads me into Act 3. So Act 3 is just the big battle sequence that we all knew was going to happen. So all the kids were captured because they went to save the one rogue Tulkun. So when the Na'vi army shows up, Jake is forced to go out alone because Quaritch demanded so, or else he's going to kill the kids. But then all of a sudden, the rogue Tulkun that the kids saved shows up and starts to fuck up the boat. And as a result, the Na'vi attack and the battle commences. This battle looked visually fantastic, as you could probably expect. It's very well shot and the effects are seamless. I don't think it's as good as the final battle from the first movie, but it was definitely very entertaining to watch. This is where the film gets kind of dumb though for a second, and it's been pointed out before, but it can't go without being said. So after Nateum dies, Jake and Neytiri are forced to go back to the cruiser because Quaritch recaptured Kiri and Took. The battle has pretty much died down besides this confrontation that's about to happen, but my question is this: where the fuck did the Na'vi army go? They didn't all die because we see them later in the film. What, did they all just go home and leave Jake and the others stranded to finish the fight? This whole hostage situation would not have happened if the writers just remembered that the Na'vi army existed and had them surround Quaritch from all sides. Yeah, the final fight is really cool, but in the back of my mind, I can't escape the fact of just how dumb it is because this fight shouldn't even be happening in the first place. The ship starts to go down with everyone in it, but they all make it out of course because then we wouldn't have Avatar 3, 4, and 5. The humans are defeated and Quaritch barely manages to escape with his life. Jake and the remainder of his family return to the reef, where they bury his dead son Nateum among the ancestors of the Metcaina, officially solidifying that the Sully bloodline will forever, at least in part, be a part of the Metcaina tribe. And that's the end of the film. Overall, even though I was going over a lot of the flaws of each of the acts, and don't get me wrong, there certainly were a lot of flaws, I don't think that it was enough for me to say that this plot was bad. I will come out and say that I think that the plot of Avatar: The Way of Water was decent. What's disappointing to me though was a lot of the plot points, especially in the second and third acts, were very similar if not almost identical to the first Avatar, and I thought that the first Avatar executed on those plot points better, which is why I believe that Avatar 2009 had a better story than The Way of Water. A lot of people complain that the plots of both Avatars are way too simple and that they're just Dances with Wolves but with blue people. But being a simple story doesn't necessarily make it bad. Some of the greatest films and stories themselves have extremely simple storylines, but it's the subtext underneath that simplicity which makes them so good. Yes, these films are obviously heavily inspired by and similar to Dances with Wolves, and Dances with Wolves is the best iteration of this story ever put to film. There's a reason why it won Best Picture. But I think that the Avatar films are definitely unique enough where they don't just feel like copies. Just because the Avatar films are similar to Dances with Wolves, I don't think necessarily makes it bad either. The Last Samurai I think is even more similar to Dances with Wolves than the Avatar films are, but you never see The Last Samurai getting criticized for it. And sure, you could argue that The Last Samurai doesn't get criticism like Avatar does because it's probably a better film than Avatar. But just because one is better than the other doesn't mean you can only blame one for copying the story. That's a complete double standard. If you didn't like the Avatar films and The Last Samurai though, because you didn't like the fact that it was way too similar to Dances with Wolves, I can respect that. It personally didn't bother me, but if you're someone that wanted complete originality from the Avatar films, I can respect that criticism. There is one big thing about the plot though that I haven't talked about yet. So while I was watching The Way of Water, I couldn't help but feel like there was something missing. There was something magic about Avatar 2009 that The Way of Water just didn't have, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I was finally able to figure it out, and I felt so stupid because it was so simple. But what makes Avatar 2009 magical, which The Way of Water just simply doesn't have, is quite simply the Avatar. The driving force of Avatar 2009 was this broken man taken from a dying planet who was transported to a dreamlike world through the means of an avatar. He starts to enjoy the dream so much that he wants it to become his reality. When he's in the dream, he feels free, feels anew, and eventually realizes that he wants to stay in that dream forever. But what gives that story so much weight is you know that the dream can be taken away at any time. When he's transported into the dream permanently at the end of the film, it feels like the task is complete, and everything that he wanted has come to fruition. We don't need to see what happens after. Avatar did not need a sequel. I don't think that it made sense to make a sequel because in my opinion, the story was complete. There was nothing else that needed to be told. The problem with this film, however, is there's no longer any weight to the dream. He's in the dream permanently, which begs the question, if you're in the dream permanently, are you even still dreaming? I don't feel anything anymore when Jake is in his Na'vi body because that can't be taken away from him anymore. The whole Avatar concept is what made that first film special, made it unique, made it magical. It was the defining, driving force of that film. And that defining attribute of the first Avatar just isn't a part of The Way of Water, which just makes it feel like there's a massive piece of the puzzle missing. So that's going to do it for this part, guys, but there's definitely still a lot more to talk about. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll be notified when I post part 2. But anyways, that's all I got for today, guys. I'll see you next time.